This is a senior rehab podcast, the podcast for rehab clinicians that want to better serve older adults.
Last week on Home Health Recharge.
What are your big questions about skilled nursing therapists?
Do I think happens?
Yeah, like what do home health therapists think? Like,
you want the
stereotypical? Yeah. Give me like your most ridiculous stereotypical whatever.
What does Troy think we do? Find out in this week's State of the Sniff.
You get them up and you lay them on a mat twice a day. And you do heel slides and leg raises and hip abduction. And then you put them back in their wheelchair and take them back to their room until the afternoon and do it again.
I mean, sometimes that happens.
Hey, you said those stereotypical.
I'm just surprised you didn't throw in something about taking people to the bathroom, because that's too. Everyone seems to think we just take people to the bathroom all the time. Let's walk to the bathroom. Come on, time for therapy. Let's go to the bathroom.
I think that's a nursing thing. I think that's what they think therapists do all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Coming from the hospital setting, it's like, how many times I'd explain I'm not the get them up out of bed guy. We actually have to do something actually that's therapeutic. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We can get them out and walk them and do some exercises and, do some training and stuff like that. But just to get them out of bed and into the chairs, that,
Yes, that we do. We also provide leg rests.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. See, SNF therapists, we are very good at providing leg rests and laying people on mats. That's it.
So now that you know what I stereotypically think y'all do, tell me what y'all actually do.
All right. So, I mean, sometimes, there's mats involved, because, all right. So, we're getting people, like I said, more and more medically complex. And so we joke that you get to know people real fast in my setting. Because you'll walk in a room and there's a therapist all up in someone's bed, helping them sit, and you have your hands in awkward places, and there's another therapist holding their feet, and there's so much lack of personal space. Job in all of it, because you'll get people who are just out of the hospital and they've been in bed for 2 weeks, and sitting up is huge. Mm-hmm. And you sit them up and they do one of these, they just lean, and you're like, all right, come back. Right. So you're working on sitting at the edge of the bed, and then you have to translate that into standing up to get into the chair. So you start there sometimes, and sometimes you have the people who you'll walk in their room and they're like, I don't know why I'm not going home, and they'll just pop right up and they'll be like, I need to go for a walk. So let's go do that because I'm bored. So it's this wide range. But there's mats. So I try a lot of times, I'll do a lot of sitting things on the mats, sitting unsupported at the edge of the mat, just because it's a good stable surface to start from. You can raise or lower it depending on their height. You can make sit to stands. It's amazing for sit to stands because you can make it as high as you need to really get them started, make it easy for them. And then you can lower it as you need to. We do walk back and forth across the room. Sometimes we'll walk somewhere, do an exercise unsupported, walk back, have a seat in your chair. We're really trying to get them out of the chairs, out of the bed, kind of reestablishing a baseline of activity tolerance and strength. So they're coming out of the hospital, they've been there 2 weeks, 3 weeks sometimes, and they've gone out of bed very little. So sometimes just sitting up is a huge deal, or like I said, you get them onto the mat. So then you have to think about things like, what's their weight bearing status? How are you getting them in and out of bed? Do you need to use a mechanical lift? Do you need to use a slide board? Can they just stand on their feet? Are they standing on one leg? Are they standing on both legs? So it's all of those, sometimes we're way at the bottom with people, and it's just a matter of adapting. We use probably every room in that building. We use the stairs in the building when we need them. We use the gym. We have, the OTs have a kitchen in our building and a little apartment where they can work. We use the lounges. We use the lobby. We're all over. people will walk out of their office and there's like a ball toss going on in the hallway, or there's like people weaving in and out of cones. Like we were joking, like for the Olympics, we had like a slalom course in the hallway and people were like weaving in and out, with all kinds of assistive devices, and we're dropping stuff on the ground and people are picking it up, whether they're bending or using their reachers so there's a lot every day. There's a lot of just it looks like sheer chaos and ridiculousness. If you walk into the gym at some points, there's just people everywhere and it's noisy and it's controlled chaos. But if you don't know what's going on, you're like, there's a lot of people standing up and yelling at each other in that room. Some of them are laying down on mats.
Yeah, I think, with any setting, I think there's, especially both of our settings, I think, there's that patient that's all the way over here on this side that's very low tolerance. And then there's the ones that are really high tolerance and stuff like that. So I think that's, in the home health setting, we kind of get a bad rap that we don't deal with these high tolerance people, but really we should more, because a lot of the times we'll discharge them. We'll say something, dumb, like, they're at max potential, and then they'll go right back into the hospital, when really we just didn't do our due diligence to actually do a full evaluation of them, a full assessment to really see what their deficits are, to really see what their goal is and how we can intervene when they're still homebound. So,
do you feel like people are a little bit more responsive in their home? Because, sometimes we have people who do really well with us, and, there's a lot of people who want to do therapy so that they can go home. It's kind of like that carrot we dangle. But then we get those people who are like, well, I would do better if I was home. You're like, you can't stand up. And they're like, yeah, but I was walking before I went to the hospital. I'm like, right. And then you had pneumonia and laid in bed for 3 weeks. Yeah, but I'm going to go home and walk again. Like, so, and there's nothing we can do at that point. Sometimes we just end up sending them home because they just refuse to do anything. Like, it's rare, lots of times we can break down those barriers, but every now and then, like, we'll send someone home and we're like, God, I hope they do something in their house.
Yeah. So we kind of get the gamut on that one. Sometimes it's, I've had so much therapy in the nursing facility that I don't need you guys anymore. And sometimes those are usually, to be honest with you, those are usually the higher level ones that kind of, you will, for the most part, will do all right. Sometimes they'll still have nursing that comes in, but they'll refuse therapy no matter how much we try to convince them. And sometimes they'll do great, like I said, and keep walking. Sometimes they'll go back down that slope. And then as long as nursing's back in, they'll be able to recognize that therapy, and convince them. I talk to them a little bit more like, hey, you're kind of going down. Maybe we should get some therapy in here. But the ones, like you said beforehand, that say, I'll just do it when I get home. I don't want to do anything in skilled nursing facility. Usually are the same ones that once they get home and we get out there is, I was doing this all before. I don't need any home therapy, and then usually they go back in, unfortunately. Sometimes they don't, but sometimes they do. But what I was thinking too is, just because a person kind of refuses you at one point doesn't mean they won't refuse you down the line. So, there are a few that you see a couple of times come back out. You still go back out and see them. And then there's that one time that they're like, okay, I'll take therapy. And that's really when you have to kind of, impress them. And if you do like you said, you do that mediocre stuff that we were talking about before, they're doing, ankle pumps.
Oh, ankle pumps.
Yeah. They were up and they're up and walking around the house, and then you start off with, we're going to do ankle pumps and heel slides. Then they're going to think this is worthless, and that's hard to debate with at that point. But, you need to kind of impress them to kind of show them that that you can do something with to help them. That's what you want. Break out some more your functional stuff and your balance and things like that. So.
All right. So random question, which I haven't asked you before, but how do you handle driving? because I know your patients are like homebound, but some of my patients, like, they are set on driving. They are set on driving. They don't care what I have to say. They're going to go home and they're going to drive. And the only thing that's keeping them from driving is the fact that they are stuck in a building and they don't have car keys.
That depends. The one thing I don't go in there is tell them that they can't drive because they're not homebound anymore.
Okay.
It's true that if they start driving every day, they're not homebound anymore. But I don't want homebound to be I want it to be an actual thing that they are, not that they're staying homebound just so they can have therapy. So at that point, if they're dead set on driving, I'll try to get them to go to outpatient or something where they can, or maybe there's another company that does Part B or something like that they could take advantage of. I don't want homebound to be their limiting. They need to be homebound, but I don't want them just to be homebound because of choice.
Okay.
But sometimes when they get out to the home, they realize that you were right in the nursing facility, that they can't drive safely, or the family convinces them that they can't. And then that's kind of where we kind of come in and kind of work at them to get back, and working with the family and the physician, because the plan of care is a collaboration between the home health agency and the physician on what's safe. Can we get them back to this point?
What does your physician oversight look like in the home?
They usually, on evaluation, we have a plan of care that we come up with that they sign off on, and that they're aware of what it contains.
Okay.
Usually it's, big ticket items, not that you have to sign off on, we're going to do ankle pumps on Monday, but you're saying, we're going to be doing some Therex, we're going to do some balance training with this patient, we're going to do some gait training, we're going to do some stair training.
Okay.
These are what the physician knows what their goals are. So, this is the patient's goal. This is where we're at. We're going to continue until they're either non-homebound or they've met their goals. Yeah. And whatever comes first and whatever is more appropriate. And then we have to reassess them every
60 days, you said?
Yes, for the most part.
Okay.
Yeah, it depends on state and it depends on insurance. But 60 days for Medicare, we'll just go with that.
So it's more like kind of how the outpatients.
Oh, I'm sorry, 30 days.
Okay. So it's more kind of like how the outpatient setup with the doctors are. Like, I guess because I'm in such a medical setting, like I'm used to doctors just being all like, you'll be talking to a patient in session and like a doctor will walk over and start talking to them. Or be like, oh, is that Mrs. So-and-so? I'm gonna hop in here for a second. Like, there's so much. Like there's someone every time, like there's always someone talking to them about some kind of medical concern. And we're trying to juggle where they are with what the doctor's saying. And, they're worried about, this, that, and the other thing. And we're worried about something else. And we're trying to kind of make it all work with what everybody is looking at. Because some of those people are so heavily medically managed in the beginning. And then you have the people who get mad because they don't see their doctor every day. So it's like
I said, it's more of our communication to the physician. Anytime there's a change in status, we need to be contacting the physician, stuff like that. But as long as everything's going all right, it's like I said, it's only like on reassessments and if there's any other parameters or something that they want to be informed on.
Yeah. And so we have this layer with nursing too. Like we have, like, there's us, and then there's the nurses, and then there's the doctors, and then there's like I said, there's the specialists, everyone in and out. So it's like you're communicating with the patient, but they're also communicating with all these other people. And, sometimes the message is not as uniform as would be nice. Yeah.
Sometimes our nurses are in a little bit more communication with the physician just because of the, way their job works. They might do in more labs. They do a lab. They got to call the physician, let them know what the labs are. For them to have a nurse, they still have to the nurse has to have a skill in there. Yep. So they can't, just because they have home health doesn't mean they automatically get a nurse. They still have to have a skill as well. So whatever that skill is, whether it be wound care, medication teaching, labs, not necessarily just labs. They have to have some other kind of skill with that.
Okay.
But for the most part, they have to have some kind of nursing skill to be in communication with them. But usually just by their whereabouts, they're a little bit more communication. But there is a lot of communication back and forth with the physician, and there needs to be just so that they know they're on the same page, mostly with their PCP.
Yep.
But there might be some information or talking if they have a cardiologist or a
a neurologist, their community primary care, the physiatrist, their primary care while they're in the facility, any PAs who may be in and out. And, a lot of times we talk through the nurses too. Yeah. Like we have to relay to the nurses who relay to some of these physicians also. So.
And you remind me of something too, just on the homebound status, they can go out for physician visits. Okay. And that's also including if they have to have dialysis, so they can actually go out for dialysis and still be homebound. Well, so we do actually see a lot of those patients because they are so, they go to dialysis and then they're like done for the day.
Yes.
And then they're still homebound. They have a ride, that's set up with either their family or somebody, so they can still go and back and forth. But that's about all they do because of everything.
Yeah. Yeah, dialysis is tough. We see that too. You come in after dialysis and they're like, nope, I don't want you.
Yeah, there's a lot of clinicians in on a patient. Usually that becomes a little bit skillful if they're going 3 days a week. Typically, like you said, they're too wiped out on the dialysis days, so they want everybody to come on the days between. And, that becomes a little bit of...
I was going to say, that can be a little bit chaos, huh?
A little bit more, yeah. You need a lot of communication between PT and OT. It's mostly the therapies. Nursing typically isn't that strenuous for them to come in. So it's usually OT and PT that we may say I'm going to come in first. Maybe you stay back a little bit more, depending on the needs of the patient. So there needs to be a lot more communication between the therapies in that situation, and nursing sometimes. Speech too, because sometimes speech can wear you out. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Some of the people are real mad at me after speech. I'm like, no, I'm done. I'm done talking. I'm done thinking. Leave me alone. DME equipment. So we're ordering stuff. We're sending it out to the home. We're working off, sometimes if we're real lucky, we have a family member who's sending us measurements. The events of the smartphone has been amazing because now people can just take pictures from their house. Like people will call their family members and be like, take a picture of the bathroom from all these angles so that I can figure out like where we're going to put bars, or like, do we need this, or will this fit in there? It doesn't always go smoothly though. And like I was telling you, like we've had calls where people don't get the DME. And then also we had issues where apparently we were ordering incorrect shower benches. So what is like, do you guys ever order things or have to correct things, or do they just generally like work with what they have? How does that work? Like when you go in, are they generally have the equipment they need? Do you find that you need to order stuff, or?
A lot of times they'll have it ordered, but it's not set up yet.
Okay.
And then we'll come in and set it up and make sure it's the right height and in the right type of, tub transfer bench or whatever.
Fixing their bathroom.
Evidently you have some kind of a lot of patients that have a special tub, or you guys just have special tub transfer benches. But
I think we have a lot of old bathrooms in this area. I think we have a lot of older houses and smaller bathrooms, I think tends to be what happens. So they have, we have a lot of people who have tubs, but then also have like a super narrow bathroom. And we're trying to figure out like, can they like sit and climb over this? Are they just swinging over? It's the whole step versus like the transfer bench that sticks out of the tub. And like I said, I think we have a lot of older bathrooms, and that's the problem in this area.
Yeah, sometimes we do order DME as well. Usually those situations are, they had a tub chair, and now they're not as strong, so now they're more appropriate for like a tub transfer bench. We may help them order that, raised toilet seats, bedside commodes. Okay. Sometimes assistive device, bent metal kind of assistive devices. And every now and then kind of wheelchairs and stuff like that. or Hoyer lifts, stuff like that. Usually I find a little bit more of that kind of DME is what we're kind of looking at if we have to order a lot of. It's more the Hoyer lifts or the wheelchairs.
Okay, so they've had like the declines, but they're not necessarily needing to go back to the hospital. Because I've sent Hoyers home. I've sent the mechanical lifts home. But you're saying like you're seeing them, and there's been no reason for a rehospitalization, but there's been enough of a decline. Yeah,
and sometimes they just don't have the equipment, as that wasn't ordered up front. It doesn't happen a lot, but sometimes it happens. It happens more on the Hoyer lift. Out of this area, sometimes I see that it's kind of one of those things that it's assumed that home health will help them do it because we know the home a little bit better. So it's not ordered on the front end.
We just send those things home. We're like, yeah, you're getting a Hoyer lift. You're getting an easy stand. We'll make it work. We'll teach your family how to do it. Let's go. What do you see in what's your role with caregivers and family members? Because we tend to see them towards the end of the stay generally. Like we'll be in contact with the family members while the patients are there and like kind of, working through what they need to do to be safe at home and like kind of collaborating with the patient with that. And then maybe they'll get a caregiver who comes in for, one day at the end. Like they've hired a caregiver. We have maybe a half an hour to teach them a bunch of stuff. And then we send them home. Do you find yourselves doing like caregiver training at home?
Ideally, what we will do is involve the caregiver as much as possible.
Okay.
There's more new regulations with the conditions of participation where we have to ask the patient who their representative is and caregiver. And we should have been doing it in the first place, but it's kind of written out in stone now a little bit more. And then encourage them to be present to the sessions. Hopefully, if appropriate, they can help with the carryover, with the exercises, with the training, transfer training, if that's appropriate. We do some training with that. And sometimes, maybe it's not appropriate. Maybe they're just independent and they don't have a caregiver, then we would just focus on the patient, obviously. But if it's appropriate and there is a caregiver, we try to incorporate them as much as possible and try to sometimes encourage the caregiver to take a little bit more of a role in the patient's care, especially because, sometimes, like you said, it'll be someone that works and they get them home and it's not quite what they signed up for or what they thought it was going to be like. So the caregivers incorporate it as much as possible all the way through it.
Okay.
As appropriate.
Yeah, because like I said, we're seeing people who are coming in, like taking a day off work and coming in, and we're like, all right, we got a half an hour, let's make this happen.
Yeah. So it's kind of a little bit more flex. Hopefully, we can flex our schedule around as much as we can around the caregiver. Because we're usually coming, between 2 or 3 times a day, or 2 or 3 times a day, 2 or 3 times a week.
Well, you guys are racking up to get the time, huh?
Yeah. Well, so, we can schedule maybe out a Tuesday or a Thursday up front. So hopefully they can be there as possible. At least somebody, we might have multiple caregivers that we're teaching. And we may have a time where we have to schedule one with maybe there's a caregiver at night. Maybe we come a little bit later. So there's advantages and there's disadvantages sometimes. Maybe, the time clock doesn't stop at 5 necessarily.
What does your day look like? Like what time are you starting? What time are you treating to? Speaking of time clock.
Typically it's just a quota of patients or points that you have. Okay. Typically about 6 patients a day. If just to dumb it down, it's about 6 patients a day.
Okay.
And then you can make your own schedule for the most part at that point. So if you have drop your kid off, maybe you start out after that. Maybe if you want to start off right at the beginning of the day, you can start off, 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock if you want to, if you can get someone to come out, let you come out at that point. The nurses are a lot better at getting people to come out earlier than
I was going to say, no one had ever better show up to my house at 6 o'clock and expect me to do anything.
Yeah, sometimes you can piggyback off the nurse, but typically it's about 6 patients a day, and then you can flex it out however you need to be. So typically it's going to be your, 8 to 5, 9 to 5 with your paperwork as you do. But a lot of times you'll usually finish your paperwork up at the end of the day. So you might get home a little bit, get home earlier than 5. Okay. And then with paperwork, finish up around 5. You do have that occasional patient where you might have to go see him like at 5:30, something like that, because of dialysis or caregiver can't get out. That specific caregiver can't get off till then. It usually doesn't happen a lot, but I mean, you can do it that way as well, just to kind of flex your day out. So you have a lot of variety.
Yeah.
Most of the time it works out for your advantage. Sometimes not so much, but you take the good and you take the bad. Now,
do you ever drive out places and no one's there? And then what do you do at that point? What do you do? For me, if I walk down the hall and, someone's not ready, I can generally find somebody else, or I can go and try to do some paperwork or, start an eval or something. But if you've driven out to someone's house and no one's there, what do you do?
I wouldn't say it happens a lot. Usually it's a miscommunication with a physician appointment. So they're like, oh man, I forgot that I had to go to the doctor. And I forgot to tell you, So usually at that point, it depends on where it's at in the day. Okay. And we can flex your schedule out a little bit more to pick up an extra patient the next day. Or maybe you have a patient that you could, maybe if it's early enough, there's someone that you could go see at the end of the day to kind of make up for that time. But I won't say that it happens a lot. Usually we're calling our patients in advance, either the night before or the day of. Mm-hmm. Everybody has their own schedule, but usually I would call my morning patients the night of, and then my afternoon patients the next morning to confirm that they were going to be there. And the patients that were in the afternoon, they knew I was going to come in the afternoon. I'd schedule my time out and say, hey, I'm going to come out at 2. I'll call you the next morning, just to make sure everything's okay. So a lot of confirming just to make sure that doesn't happen, but occasionally it does. Then we kick in the door and
I'm treating you anyway. I'm here
now. I'm doing therapy with somebody. Somebody here.
Sometimes I feel like I'm walking through the halls being like, someone's exercising. I don't know who it is. Someone's going to do it. Someone's having therapy.
I see you behind that tree, that bush over there. A lot of the questions that you get in home health is when you go out, it's like, what should I wear?
Yeah.
It depends, like you could do whatever you want in pajamas as long as you have something that you're not going to slip in your shoes. I don't care. If we go outside, you want to wear something a little bit warmer, but unless it's the summertime, then you can wear, wear your shorts, your pajamas, whatever. That's the nice thing about being in your home. It's, it's your party. You wear whatever you want.
Same. I don't care. You can come down and whatever. If you have a Johnny coat, you have to wear 2 though, because it's a family establishment and no one wants to see your tush.
So I have a question for you.
Sure.
Sometimes, occasionally, home health will be ordered and then from the hospital, and then the patient gets out there and it's more, they were talking in the hospital about how, that patient, like you said earlier, once I get home, I'll be fine. And then they find out that they're not. And then they're scrambling to try to get into a skilled nursing facility. And then we're trying to scramble to get them back into a nursing facility or get them into a nursing facility. On a patient like that, what kind of handoff would you like to see from a home health therapist to the skilled nursing facility?
I would always just love to see an eval. I feel like I would like to see what you saw when they were there. And because you were in their home, what were the major barriers to them being in their home? Just so I can kind of refine what I'm looking at a little bit better. If I know what they failed at already, it's almost like I can focus on those things in a more controlled environment. Okay. Because I do have a more controlled environment, we have a lot of hands. I have a lot of equipment. I have a lot of, people that I can really control for a lot of things, eliminate a lot of factors, and then scale up as I need to. So I'd love to see an eval, and I'd love to see particularly what they failed at and why they had to come, why they failed at home, why they had to come to the facility.
That makes sense. That's helpful, actually. Because I think a lot of the times we're just kind of focused on just getting them in there. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes we'll be talking with the insurance company about why they need to go in there, and then what we saw and why they're not quite appropriate for home, and why a skilled nursing facility would be a better place. But like you said, I don't know if that ever gets handed off to you all who's in the facility.
No, we just kind of get like a vague story about how like they went home and it didn't work. A lot of times we get that I went home and it didn't work, and so now I'm here. You're like, what part of it didn't work? It just didn't work. Like I couldn't do it. It was too much. Okay, but like, and then you're like, all right,
just make it work.
I'll just make it work. Like we'll try a bunch of things and we'll see quite possibly what your issues were at home.
That's your patient-centered goal, right?
Yeah.
Patient will make it work. And
I had one person who told me that his goal was to go home and watch TV on the couch.
All right.
So all we need to be able to do is sit up, transfer, edge of bed, do wheelchair to couch, being able to put legs up on couch. Happy. That was it.
Yeah. I think we think about our goals. It's always that little tricky place. You know what's best for them, what they should be doing more. So, you have to kind of work that in there, but also work and understand that that's, this is an adult human being who can make his own choices. This is his goal. Let's work on that. But you're also a healthcare professional, and you have to let them know, what the consequences of
that choice could be.
Yeah. You're probably going to be right back here, because that doesn't keep you from staying out of the hospital.
Yes. If you eat laying down and you've had pneumonia previously,
yes,
go back to the hospital. We had that conversation. Maybe you could eat sitting up.
Yeah, there you go.
Stay up for half an hour. Then you can lay back down. How about that?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've had, what did you just say? You just said something that I was we actually had in a meeting one time, someone said, well, the patient is capable of making bad choices. Well, we all are making capable of bad choices. Like, I've exercised that decision-making ability a few times.
Yeah, I'm sure that's part of my medical record.
Bad choices. And reconciling the fact that like people are gonna make bad choices.
And it's their choice to make bad choices.
And I feel like we can, like I said, I have a little bit more of a controlled environment, so I can kind of control some of those bad choices, just like not set them up to happen. Like some of those things I can just set up to not occur at all. But, like we were talking about like the conditions of people's houses, like what their stairs are like, you were saying earlier, and, what is actually going on in there. Those things, in the end, we can't control.
Right.
I think that's a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah, they have a choice you can help them as much as you can, and as much as they're willing to let you help them. But at a certain point, like I said, it's they have a right to live however they want to live, whether that's how you would like it or not. So, you just have to honor their right and just, move on with your life.
So ideally, what would you like to get paperwork wise if someone is coming from a SNF setting into home health? What would you like to see?
I would like to see however they were functioning in the skilled nursing facility at the end, kind of like a discharge summary.
I was going to say, so you'd like our discharges?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes we get it. Sometimes we don't. So it's a mixed bag.
How do you think we can improve the communication between our settings? Like practically, what do you think like we on the ground could do? Because I feel like there's some things that we could say we'd like to see, but we don't have any power to control that.
Right.
So like where could we, grassroots level, what could we as therapists do?
I think things like this to kind of help understand each other's perspective helps. That way we can preemptively put things in our discharge and hope that you get it. Like you said, that, and just knowing what helps each setting, I think is a lot about really is the first step. You see anything different?
Yeah, no, it's just like I said, I think because we don't know, I think a lot of times like we don't know what's going on with home health. Like, we don't know, like, where they're going, who they're going to get, anything about it. Like, we don't hear anything back. There's, like I had said to you earlier, there's one home care therapist in the area who I hear his name frequently, and everyone seems to really like him. His patients seem to do really well. But I wouldn't know, like, what area he's in. I don't necessarily know like who he gets. I don't really know, so I don't know enough. Like with outpatients, like if I have patients who I know are going to outpatient, I can refer to different facilities based on like if I know a therapist there, if they have transport, if they have like, if they're, do they have like a focus on this? Like I know things about the local outpatient settings. I know some of the therapists. I know some of like the specializations. I know those things. I can send people there confidently. But I feel like with home health, like I don't know anything. I don't know, I would love to just like meet some of the home health therapists in my area, like to just, sit down and be like, like I said, like you guys have your meeting like once a month. Like maybe if we could figure out a way to just have like, I don't even know.
Well, I think
kind of like social hour thing. You know what I mean? We could just meet each other and like figure things out. Would be nice.
It might be interesting, about with the PT pub nights and stuff like that. I think that's one of the things where they try to get all the therapists and stuff into one room so they can kind of talk in a certain area. I don't see that a lot around here, but occasionally you'll see like a PT pub night.
I feel like we would have the ability to do that. It's just, I'm not going to organize that. Goodness knows, I don't have the time for that. Someone needs to do that for me.
How much organizing is that other than we're going to meet here for drink at 6:00, be there, be square.
Like a local version of what you and I are doing right now.
Right.
I know. I can't refer people down to North Carolina.
Oh, come on. It's just a few hour drive.
Sure, if you want to drive up to Jersey and bring people here, like, welcome.
That would be a long day.
That would be a long day.
I'd probably see one person like a week.
I was going to say, yeah.
I know I went with a really stereotypical SNF point of view there, but, I don't think I fully understood exactly what y'all did in the first place either. So I think a lot of this, especially with our Facebook group and everything we have going on, all the collaboration, especially if we can talk between settings. I know a lot of it's kind of revolved around geriatric PT, which is something we all have a stake in, which I think is great. That, just a little bit of inter-setting dialogue was always good too, to help understand and help each other out. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Because I feel like we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all coming at it from different angles. We need to it's good to understand where everyone's coming from, so we know how we overlap and where we don't, and what we can do to make it easier. As you said, handing off the ball.
Yeah, and how we can strengthen each other.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is Nicole Nexon, and thank you everyone for listening to State of the SNF with a little carryover from Home Health Recharge and Troy Mead.
Yep. Thank you all for listening to me drone on about home health.
And hey, if you have a high-low mat, feel free to go lay on it and do some heel slides, right?
Some ankle pumps.
Hit me. Thank you for listening to the Senior Rehab Podcast. If you only listen to these podcast episodes, you are missing out on 90% of the Senior Rehab Project. Hop on over to seniorrehabproject.com where you can join the movement that's advancing care for older adults. You can join for free or become a part of the Game Changers where you can get some free gear and access to our monthly meetup. Just go to seniorrehabproject.com. I appreciate y'all, and I'll talk with you soon. But in the meantime, do not forget to stay funky.